Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and looking through my comments, I came across a question, and it's something people ask routinely. It's something I've covered in the past, but it actually is a good question because a lot of people don't understand. And that question is, if so many endurance athlete, MMA fighters, soccer players, people like that use testosterone and other anabolics, why aren't they jacked? Why don't they look like bodybuilders? So let me put on my +5 out of weaponsmithing, work on scaling up my crafting a little bit, and let's talk about this. And that is an interesting question because I've pointed out a lot of studies in the past showing that people who don't lift weights, who have been lifting weights and they stop lifting weights, if they go on a reasonable amount of these substances, the studies show that they gain muscle mass when they quit lifting. And I mean, it's significant amounts of muscle mass. We're talking the amount of muscle mass a noob will gain in his first year of hard lifting. They'll gain it in 5 months sitting on the couch. Now, bodybuilders hate that. They absolutely hate it because they're like, how dare you say that? How dare you say that our hard work isn't what gave us our results? It's not, guys. It's not. Look how many pro bodybuilders weigh 260, 270 when they're shredded, contest lean, over 300 pounds in the off season. Their height, if they're like 5'7", which is your average pro bodybuilder, these guys are really short. You'd be surprised. Would only weigh about 170 pounds. Had he been training for 10 years completely clean, he would probably be 170 when he's ripped. He probably would gain 20, 25 pounds of muscle. Some of these guys have 100 pounds of muscle over what they would have if they were completely clean. So that being said, yeah, these substances account for the vast majority of the muscle they're gaining. And we have studies showing that people who don't lift weights still gain very significant amounts of muscle if they use enough of these things. However, there's a dose-dependent response. It's a dose-dependent response. You look at the studies where people were using 600 milligrams and they averaged, what, about 18 pounds of muscle? The guys on 300 averaged about 11 pounds of muscle. 11 or 12, something in that range. They went under that, it was just a couple of pounds of muscle. So now you're understanding the difference here. There's a dose-dependent response. And what people need to understand, they have in their head, they see all these people on gear, right? They get in their head over this is the natural limit. This is what should be obtainable natural, and that person might actually be using a bunch of Tren and Masteron and Anavar. You don't know, and you're thinking that's what's obtainable natural. And then you see this other guy who's using enormous, mind-boggling amounts of substances and is genetically gifted to gain muscle, who is way bigger, and then in people's heads, that's what people who are on stuff looks like. But the reality is, the guy that a lot of people out there in the fitness world, the bodybuilding world, think is natural, is using 3 or 4 or 5 times as much stuff sometimes as this endurance athlete or this MMA fighter. He's actually using a lot more than they are. And that's the big difference. So people say, well, why are they using these things? Having known a number of endurance athletes and things over the years, you guys know what's common for an endurance athlete? Like 200 milligrams of testosterone. Go read forums where people admit to doping. There are runner forums out there, marathon runners, triathlon athletes and things who admit and they discuss with each other what they use. Those forums have existed for a decade. Go check them out. You're going to find that like 200 milligrams of testosterone is really common for marathon runners. Well, that's a third of what was used in these studies, and there's a dose-dependent response. These people, from the amount they're using, have probably only gained 4 or 5 pounds of muscle from the stuff they're using over their careers. Most of them have a really high energy output relative to their intake. So if they stay at 160 pounds, and let's say they're 6 foot tall, because their caloric burn keeps them there and they don't want to get too big, and that can be dictated by calories, because look, if you're not in a calorie surplus, if you weigh 160 pounds and you eat maintenance calories forever, you're not going to get to 170 pounds no matter what you put in your body. I mean, that's understandable. These substances do not create matter out of nothing. They can't create energy out of nothing. They're not magical. The building blocks to build the muscle and the size and the energy turnover to put extra weight on a person has to be there. I'm not saying some of them don't change metabolism and feed efficiency and cause that, but the stuff these guys are using doesn't. Because that's a slightly different set of stuff there. That's another topic completely. So what you're seeing is you're seeing these people who are taking these things to improve their endurance, and to improve their recovery, not to gain a lot of muscle mass. And you know what? At a certain threshold, things like testosterone, yeah, it keeps building muscle the more we use, as far as we know, at a higher rate, but it doesn't enhance recovery. The low amounts, something like 200 milligrams, will significantly improve work capacity, significantly improve endurance. It doesn't gain as much muscle. As the dose goes up, that will taper off and eventually get to a point where it starts negatively affecting endurance. Part of that will be due to extra muscle mass, extra retention, higher blood pressure. There will be different problems that are accumulated by people using very large amounts that would negatively affect their endurance. So there's a dose-dependent response on that also, but there's a threshold that's very, very low relative to the way that people use these things that enhances endurance, enhances work capacity, speeds up recovery. That's why these people are taking them. They're not taking significant enough amounts to gain any real significant amount of muscle mass. And again, some of these guys would be bigger if they ate more food. And for a lot of these people, because of the amount of conditioning work they do, it doesn't matter if it's an endurance athlete, an MMA guy, a soccer guy. Everyone in the world calls it football, but I'm an American, so we call it soccer. If they used more, they would be bigger. But a lot of them, if they did less conditioning work and ate the same calories, their caloric balance would be better and they would start gaining weight. A lot more of that weight would obviously come from muscle because of these factors, because a lot of them use a little bit of stuff. They do weight train hard, they do conditioning work, they have great nutrient partitioning, but they're not consuming enough calories to be 180 pounds. 190 pounds. But when you think about it, look at some of the MMA fighters out there who are athletically gifted who do get up to those body weights, 180, 200 pounds. Some of them are pretty jacked. See plenty of boxers and other people who probably use some things that they are pretty jacked when the body weight goes up. But like with anything else, if the energy turnover isn't present to gain weight, because you can't escape energy in, energy out, they're only going to get so big, irrespective of what the hormonal stimulus is in your body. And that kind of goes back to this whole idea that people have that hormones are more important for weight gain or weight loss than calories. Well, this should debunk that nonsense right there. Because if hormones dictated everything, these people should be gaining weight and gaining muscle without enough calories to do so. Because the hormones are present. It's why most top experts don't take things like the insulin hypothesis seriously from fat gain, because the truth is, that's a perfect example. No amount of hormone in that body in your body is going to put weight on you without a caloric surplus. It doesn't work that way. In fact, excessive insulin in your body without enough caloric surplus will put you in a coma. So again, it doesn't actually work that way. You can't escape calories in, calories out with hormones. And it's understandable that a lot of people would think these guys would be more jacked, even with maintenance calories, because of the hormones in their body, because the whole fitness community online has all these wacky theories about hormones affecting weight gain or weight loss more than calories do. So if you follow those sort of kooky theories, which are not based on reality, it would make sense that people say, well, they should be a lot bigger, they should be a lot more jacked. Well, no, they're not taking the amounts that people are associating with being enhanced. Yes, they're enhanced. They're ideally enhanced for their athletic endeavor. But they're not taking even the amounts that many people consider their natty hero, who they consider to be a natural bodybuilder or a natural fitness competitor or whatever, is very likely using more than these guys are. And he's consuming more protein, probably more calories relative to his energy turnover, because he's not doing hours and hours of conditioning work every day. He's probably eating enough to gain weight when he's trying to put on size and gain muscle. So it's that combination. Of course he's going to be a lot bigger and more jacked. So that's the reason a lot of these guys aren't. Lance Armstrong was the perfect example. Lance Armstrong used testosterone and growth hormone, two of the most important substances that bodybuilders today use to get massive, right? But the amounts actually matter. The amounts matter. They're not using the amounts. He's using 200 milligrams and maybe 1 unit of growth hormone. Pro bodybuilder might be using 3,000 milligrams, 4,000 milligrams, and 8 units of growth hormone. See the difference? We're comparing apples to oranges here. They're not really comparable in that regard. In fact, the modest users out there are probably not going to gain very much muscle, more than they would have natty. It'll be a little bit, but it won't be massive. It won't be massive. And even then, without the food being present, they won't even gain that. At the end of the day, they might recomposition a little bit. Alright guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.